everyone. Welcome again to another episode of the Simplify Your Life Summit. I'm your host, Justin Crosscarry, and today I am joined by transformational life experts, Gemma and Sascha. Thank you guys for being here so much. I appreciate it. Sascha, my apologies. You know what? It's all about the imperfection, right? Trying to be perfect and getting in my head. I know we just talked about that at the beginning, but anyway.
Breathe it out.
Yeah, breathe it out, right? Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited to have you guys talk on relationships and for all these viewers to learn really about how you came to be where you're at now, helping people really transform their lives, get over barriers, break through to their true authentic self. So without further ado, I'd love for each of you really quickly just to kind of share your story and how you got to where you're at right now and what you're doing.
Sure, with pleasure. So first of all, thank you for having us. It's a great joy to be with you today and to be with your audience and to speak about this subject, which is so important, much more important than many give credit to. So brief background about me. I was born with a disability that should have left me in a wheelchair, mentally challenged and dead by the age of 7. My mother was an abusive person, emotionally abusive person with me. She committed her life to destroying mine for various reasons that we're not going into today. But and so she committed suicide 6 years ago. And from there, actually, and even before, as I am walking, I've done everything the medical community told me will never happen, cannot be done, impossible, not written in their books, forget about it. Don't even bother putting him in fancy schools because he will not make it, And still, I went to the best schools. I've done everything they told me it cannot be done. And so for us, it's really important, and she will tell her story, but it's really been important for me for a long time, even long before I met Gemma, to actually tell people, explain people, and guide people on how it is possible for them too, and it doesn't need to be like a life or death situation like it was for me, or you're walking or not walking situation. But the truth is we're all facing walls, we're all facing pitfalls, we're all facing those curveballs that life throws at us, and it's important to have the right tool at your disposal and to know how to not only use them, but how to use them in the right sequence in order for you to go above and beyond what you ever thought possible, meaning go above your wildest dreams. That's why I got into this a long time ago. And do you want to tell your story?
Yeah, thank you very much. So yes, and I am victorious over 15 years of domestic abuse, beaten, put down, raped, and much more than that actually. And in 2013, same month than his mother committed suicide, I left for real and for good, and it's the last time of my life, this whole situation. And as of that moment on, as I just met Sascha a few days before that, we started a relationship of mentoree and mentor. So for a few months, he really helped me, first of all, make sense of all of that and make sense of the abuse, to understand how to transform myself. After, when I was back on my feet and already better, this is when we started to say, hey, by the way, maybe we could do something else.
Maybe it has evolved into something else,
Yeah.
But that was only afterwards. It was really a starting point of a mentor-mentoree relationship.
That was never the intention in the beginning. No. The intention for me was really to get her back on her feet and give her those tools in the right sequence so that she can build her life and have a great life, and be done with what she's been through since she was 17 years old. And well, sometimes life does happen and things evolve.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Yeah, and it happens for a reason, right? It's happening to us. That's such a beautiful story, and really a testament to, I'm sure, what you guys mean to each other, right? Him supporting you in your breakthrough, and I'm sure, I've learned when I'm coaching that even when I'm coaching others, I'm really coaching myself as well. So I'm sure it was the same for you, Sascha, when you're coaching her. I'm sure that opened up things for you. So was it
Interestingly enough, not really, because I had done all my work before. I've been doing it for over 20 years. So, I had made sense of everything in my life before. So for me, it was really giving that forward. And I think it's important to be at a state in your life where you can give to other people, because if you still need work, I mean, we all do need work to some extent, but if we use it as our own therapy, then we're not, I think, not really ready at a position to give our best to others, you know, and so that's really important. But obviously when you coach others, you mentor others, you discover things or you remember things, you know. So that was my case with her. Suddenly I was like, hey, that's actually an interesting point I just made, and it somehow was integrated in my life, but I don't think about it anymore, like every single day, like, oh, I have to think about this, I have to think about this. Now, not like this. It's like suddenly it's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. That I remember this. I came up with this 15 years ago, you know, with this breakthrough.
Right.
Totally. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's always good to refresh the mind, right? When we're hearing these things, because it's easy to forget those. So to hop onto relationships, I mean, I know you guys, that wasn't the intent, but for each one of you, were you looking? And if you were looking, what would you say are some simple things that, you know, some tips that you would give someone that is looking for that special someone, and really connecting with that partner?
So my first thing, excuse me, can I go first? So the first thing really I would say, I was not looking at all. You know, I mean, I was not looking. I was in my life. I was happily single. I was doing my thing. I was pretty successful at it. And it just happens, you know. And so I would say the first thing is really stop looking, start being. Because, you know, I strongly believe, and I've seen it so much through my mentoring and coaching throughout the years, that the more people try to look for something, that's the least chances they have to find it. And so if you stop looking, but you start being, you will start realizing with whom you like being the most. And that's how actually our thing has evolved, is that we actually like being together. We like sharing our time. You know, it was not like rosy and skies and hearts everywhere. It was not that, because that's the fleeting part that goes away after a while. And the real relationship is beyond that point. What's going to happen beyond that point? And we just realized we like each other's presence. We like being with each other. We complement each other really well. We go through tough situations really well. Because, I mean, as she said, we met at the same time, the same weekend, actually, when my mother committed suicide on that Monday, you know, and she left domestic violence 2 weeks later. And so, but not for me, but only because I gave her a solution. So we were able to really manage these things and said, hey, we did that. We really feel good together. It's easy. It's simple. We don't have to like make it work. It just it works. It's harmony. It's peaceful. Let's see where this leads us, you know, without making a huge commitment, say we're going to be spending the rest of our lives together. So let's see where this leads us.
Yeah.
And to answer the second half of your question, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I would love what do you mean by, you know, being? I'd love for you to dive a little bit more into that.
Wow.
Yeah, so maybe you want to be saying this part?
Yes, very important. So when you say there is, it's not looking for someone. It's not like checking everyone and thinking, oh, maybe you are, I don't know, maybe you are, I don't know. It's not that. Because when you do that, actually you push away the energy of the person you are checking out. It's not the way it works. When you feel as if you are already in love with the right person for you, suddenly you realize that, by the way, this person is actually already in front of you. And maybe you should just see better and see with your heart, meaning being.
And so being is really effortless. You know, it's not trying, how do I have to look in order to impress that person, you know, or how do I have to be, or am my diploma's good enough, or am I good enough? Should I lose a couple pounds? You know, should I go to the gym? No, that's not all of it, because then you're trying to fit into a box. And all of this is not sustainable over the long run. It's not, because life happens, you know, we change, our bodies change, situations happen. And so it's about the being part. It's about making it simple. And just as the person you are, do you have somebody in your life who you feel like compliments you and the person feels the same? And there you have your relationship, you know, because that's exactly how it should feel. It's not about being codependent. It's about being complementary to each other. We complement each other. We very well exist apart from each other, but we complement each other.
Yeah, I would love for you to touch more on that with the codependency and complementing, right? Because That's huge.
That's a huge one. Yes, that's a huge, huge one. So codependency, as I was married 2 times before with 2 abusive ex-husbands. I know how it is when you are so fusional. You feel that you are one. You feel that you cannot exist without the other. Every time you leave home, you are here. You are here on the phone, trying to never lose that touch. I mean, it's like a fear of losing the other constantly. That means that there is such pressure in that kind of relationship. And at the same time, it's unbearable to be together and it's unbearable to not be together. It's like, it's terrible. So when you can shift out of that kind of relationship and go into harmony, this is when you feel really at peace together. And being together is being at peace and checking in one another, make sure everything is okay when we are not together. That's just natural. But there is a lot of trust when we are not together. A lot of trust.
And I would like to add that, complement is 1 + 1 = 2, but there is a plus in the middle. And there are 2 different ones in that formula. And codependency is really when you think you need the other person because the other person is a part of what you don't have. So you're trying to fit the second one into the first one, and what you have left is not 1 + 1, but it's just 1. And that equals 0. And so codependency is really thinking, oh, she has a missing part of me and she has that. And so now I need her because I need to fill that void. And so a relationship is really also, you help each other fill each other up, but you have your own responsibility to fill your own voids. Nobody can bring that to you. So if you go into a relationship hoping that anyone out there will fill your voids, it might work for a while, but it can quickly become very unhealthy, and then it breaks up in a massive explosion and fights and whatever, because that was never sustainable in the first place, because we're 2 different ones, and together we make 2 or more than 2, depending on how much we complement each other. And so that's really to understand. You are responsible to making sure that your one, your being, is as complete as it can be. And if it is not, it's not the other person who fills it, it's you, through finding mentors, through finding people, books, whatever you want to do it, but it's up to your responsibility. The other one is not there to fill your holes. And so that's where you go from codependency to really complementing each other, because then we can help each other. We can say, an example is like, okay, I don't feel great about this. How can I help you with that?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't say you are filling my hole. No, it said, how can I help you? How can I be of assistance to you to fill that void, whatever it might be,
That's a very
I love that. And it's when you were talking about earlier about looking so hard for something and it could be standing right in front of you, how you're talking about that, Gemma, you totally reminded me, or that person could be, when maybe you're looking for something in the fridge and you're looking all over, and then you realize it's right there in the middle shelf, like right in front of you, because you're so just like worried about the doing rather than the being. So I really love that. And also with the codependency, and like that's not just for relationships, right? I know a lot of people think that I will be happy when I have that job. I will be happy when I have that money. I will be happy when I have that relationship. So I really want to land that for everyone that's listening, is it's so much more important than just a relationship, right? You can let that go into your life, correct?
Yeah, and if you understand life, or otherwise said, how energy works in quantum physics a little bit, you understand that most people have it upside down. So when they say, I will be happy when, nothing will ever happen, and you will stay in the position being happy when, so being unhappy all the time, because the universe will keep you right there. So the universe says, be happy now, and everything else will be given to you. And you find meanings of that in different sacred texts and whatever, that says, be that now and the rest will be added onto you. But it's really true. The universe will give you what you are. And that's what I said with the being. If you are fine with yourself, the universe will give you somebody who's fine with them. If you're a mess, the universe will likely match you with somebody who's a mess. So that's why it starts with you working on yourself first, because the other person, whether it be a relationship, a best friend, or a colleague, or whatever, will not be able to fix you. That's your responsibility. And so often we use a relationship as a patch, and we say, oh, you're the Band-Aid. And that works for a while, but then you realize the Band-Aid was not the solution. You're still bleeding to death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like trying to put something together with duct tape. It only lasts so long. Yeah. So you guys work together. You guys live together.
Yes.
I know just living together can be an issue for some relationships. How are you guys able to bind both of them together and make that work?
You know, 4 key ingredients, and I know for you, you will add some too, but for me, and it's been really working, you know, throughout every type of relationship I had, whether it was relationships with a woman, business, whatever. It's 4 ingredients. It's transparency. You have to be completely transparent with the other person. There should not be any secret, you know. Transparency, and you will say more about this as well. Transparency is so important. Then the other thing is honesty. Because you can be transparent, but if you are conveniently forgetting to mention a couple of things, then you're not being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the second key ingredient. It's honesty. And then it's what we call strategic meetings. You know, most people say that quality time and then everything will work fine. Yeah, quality time is important, but if during that quality time you're not transparent, you're not honest, and you don't talk about what we call strategic meetings, that's what we have every 2 to 3 weeks, because life changes and we're individual ones. So we sit together and we say, okay, what's been going on really, you know, and are we aligned? Are we still going in the same direction? Do we want the same thing, or do we adapt the course? Because if 2 people drift too far off course, then it's difficult to put them back together. So it's important to understand, you know, and say maybe something has changed and maybe I don't want that furniture anymore, you know, or I hurt my back and this thing doesn't work anymore, or I don't want a big house anymore. I thought about it. I want a smaller house because this and this, you know, all of these things, you know, or it could be simple things, you know, we've been eating spinach. I hate spinach. I don't want to eat spinach for a month anymore. But if you don't know, you want to keep on doing the right thing, but you don't know that it's the wrong thing, that it has suddenly become the wrong thing. So every 2 to 3 weeks, we sit together and we say, on all the major life subjects, are we still aligned, or has something changed for you, or something changed for me? How do we strategically adapt to that? Because if you don't, and you just put it on quality time, well, that's great, but then you drift apart eventually. And you can still spend 2 very different people who are not fit for a relationship, can still spend quality time together, but it won't be a relationship material. And so that's what we should never forget. When you're in a relationship, it is a relation. It goes both ways. And that means giving and receiving. That means listening and speaking. But that means both ways. It needs to be balanced. And then there is a secret ingredient. That's the reason why we never fight. And the secret ingredient is when we have a disagreement, we sit down and we say, okay, we're 2 responsible adults here. Is the thing we're talking about right now or disagreeing on still going to matter next week or next month? If the answer is no, then we're just saying, looking at each other and say, look, I love you very much. Let's agree to disagree and move on.
Exactly.
Because we don't have to make a big deal if it's not even important tomorrow, next week, or in a month anymore, you know? Now, if the answer is yes, this is still important to me tomorrow, next week, or in a month, well, then we have to find a compromise. But that's really how you avoid most of the fights, because most of the fights are worthless. I mean, they're about nothing. So if you can just agree, you know, I mean, and for instance, I like blue, you like purple. I'm not going to try and fit you and trying to force you into my box and loving blue, you hate blue. So let's just disagree, agree to disagree, and let's be happy together. Have your purple, have your blue, and let's move on.
Yeah.
And so if it's not, then we have and if it's still important, then when we talk, we make room right now and we call for an emergency strategic meeting to make sure that we find a compromise that really works for both of us right here, right now, not delay it and say, I heard we don't agree on that thing that's still important to one of us in months or 2 months or 3 months. Let's put it off in 3 weeks. Because in the meantime, it's festering, it's making things worse. And so it's about making time right here, right now, of what is important. And if you have all of this together, then the quality time is going to be great, because you know you have transparency, you know you have honesty, you know you are on the same page, you're going in the same direction, and you are removing all the disagreements that are actually not even worth fighting about.
Wow.
You want to add something?
Yeah. So to the question, how do you live together? I would also say we allow each other the space to be without each other. We allow each other to, one be in that room, the other be in the other room, one doing that, the other doing this, and other things like that. We allow each other the space to think straight and to think individually first, because we are two individuals sharing life together. Even if we can look as an entity, we are still two individuals. So we respect each other with that, and we ask each other a countless of questions just to know, okay, so what do you want to eat now? How do you feel? Do you want to just rest? Do you want to work more? Am I disturbing you? What are you doing right now? Just to make sure that we still respect each other in both directions. And we do that all the time. By asking the other and not imposing on the other, we respect each other.
I love it. For these conversations, right? They're I'm sure now. How long have you guys been together?
We've been together now 7 years. 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
So I'm sure now they're a little bit more comfortable than they have been in the past. How were you able to work through that discomfort when you were first having these conversations, right? Because in my opinion, a lot of people with relationships, it doesn't work because they're unwilling to have that uncomfortable conversation and say what's truly on their heart and then stuff it down.
You know,
how were you able to do that?
I remember, it's a good question. I will let you mainly answer, but I will maybe just briefly start. You know, very early on when we had felt that this had evolved into something more and that we really enjoy being together and we complement each other, we didn't just take this for a given and say, okay, let's jump on the next cruise and take it and the cruise of life and go for it and we can never disembark. No, I actually had her come to, I remember it was a kitchen table and I had her sit down and I said, look, that's great, but we have to also understand, are we going in the same direction? You know, do we want similar things? I'm not saying the same things because we're individuals, but do we want similar things in life? Do we see the world in similar ways that are close enough that we complement each other? And so it's important to, when you want a relationship to work, to not just like go on and like hope that maybe, and while it's nice, let's keep it nice and have that discussion sometimes down the road and hope that maybe you will get it and hope maybe you will agree. No, as a responsible adult, you want to have that conversation right now because it also prevents a lot of pain. Because if you see that you're actually not aligned at all, then yes, you perfectly complement each other, but maybe more as friends, as in a relationship. Because otherwise you're going to be torn apart. So that was the first thing, is really sit down and have that talk right away. Because if the person on the other side of the table is not willing to have that talk for whatever reason, then you already see roadblocks. Then you see that the person may not actually be mature enough to have that type of conversation, you know? And there I'm really talking about adult relationships. I'm not talking about 2 12-year-olds who think they're in love, you know? And don't know what love actually is. But love is actually that. It's loving yourself and loving the other, giving each other a chance to be aligned with each other. And if you're not making the decision saying, okay, it feels great being with you, let's be friends, because otherwise it's just going to be a disaster. If we're in a relationship, we're going opposite ways. You know, you want to take your boat and go to Hawaii, and do you want to take your boat and go to Europe? We're going different directions. And that's never going to work.
Yeah, that can possibly ruin intimate relationship and also a friendship too. So yes.
So that's important to sit down and have that talk, you know, and say, I'm having that talk with you because I'm a responsible adult and I'm acting responsibly, and I want to know whether we're actually close enough to make it go work. You know, I mean, sure, I mean, you want to visit one island of Hawaii and I'm keen on visiting on the other. Well, we can make a compromise and see if we can visit both, or if we can visit one time and the other another time, but that's close enough. In terms of, if we speak in terms of images. But if you have complete opposites, it's important to know them before, because the more you are involved in your evolved relationship, the more you will actually go to complete and utter breakdown if you don't have it. And what about you? What was the important part for you?
I would answer, I knew how fighting in a couple was. I really knew that. And I knew that so well that I was just expecting to fight with Sascha at the beginning, a lot. But it did not happen. And I was there so amazed and so like, ooh,
I don't fight.
what? What's going on here? We should fight right now. Like, okay. And I really tried hard. And it did not work out the way I was expecting. Because I come from 15 years of domestic violence. And domestic violence means constant fight. Of course. And I didn't know any better until I did learn with Sascha how it is to live in harmony, in peace, and in respect from each other and in love.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning, she was really like having that behavior and pushing my buttons. And then once I said to her, are you going to keep on doing this? Because I'm not fighting and I'm not going to scream at you. But this behavior is highly annoying. So if we could put this to an end, it would be better for us.
Yes. So what I did transform, where I really did transform deeply, is to become comfortable by becoming aware of where does it hurt in me that induce my behavior of attacking the other or blaming the other instead of recognizing. And this is really where I shifted at the beginning, recognizing that I was suffering so much.
And it goes back to what we said in the beginning, fixing yourself and recognizing that it is you and do everything you can.
Exactly, so much. So when you really become aware that you are hurting, you can even detect in your own feelings. Okay, this morning I wake up, I'm already upset. I have no idea why and how, but I'm already upset and I'm very ultra emotional and sensitive.
And that goes back to being transparent, you know.
Exactly. So when those days happen, I did learn to go to Sascha and to tell him, okay, today I'm going to explode for absolutely nothing. Just telling you beforehand, you are not to blame for anything. I love you so much. I don't want to hurt you. Just know that I'm really in a bad mood. And that happens. And with that coming as an information for Sascha, we were able every time to take a step back and to say, okay, do you know anything that's going on inside of you? Actually not. I have no idea. I just feel awful, but it is as it is. And by becoming aware and working out the feelings before it explodes and before it breaks a relationship, this is really where a lot of self-awareness came into play for the healthy relationship we live together.
Because, you know, often people react to us. And so the trick here in the sentence is to us. So we have to have the self-awareness to look inside first, but without judgment or blame, not saying, I should not be this way, I shouldn't feel this way, I shouldn't. No, that's not working, because then you make things worse. It's just, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel hurt right now? What's in me that has maybe not healed from the past? And that's why through our work also we free people from trauma and limited beliefs, roadblocks and pitfalls along the way. You know, of course, for certain traumas, we're not doctors, go see your doctors. But if it's like childhood trauma, everything else that what we've been through, we have the tools and all of this to help. But it's like, it's all these fears that we have in ourselves, and we hide them so well by building 15 walls around them. But when they're still triggered, we still explode. And so it's important to really go into that self-awareness, that self-feeding, and take responsibility and say, why do I feel this way? Not just, I shouldn't, or it's bad. Why do I? And then taking the appropriate steps to fix it or fill the void or whatever inside of you, so that you do not feel triggered every time the certain thing comes up and you're triggered again. And so it's important to work on our own triggers and to actually have that self-awareness. I'm not saying we should all become Buddha. We're not that. But we should become self-aware of our own triggers and do our own work, because we also want to make sure that we're as whole, W-H-O-L-E, as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, very much.
It's pretty remarkable how our subconscious works, right? Like going into this relationship, Gemma was like, wait, I'm comfortable with fighting. This is different. This is weird. This isn't supposed to happen like this. So what was that?
18 months of trying to make him explode. Never happened. 18 months.
And that's where it comes into what you guys were discussing earlier. Like a lot of people think a relationship is 50-50. but and correct me if I'm wrong based on, I mean, you guys have a thriving relationship, but I look at it as 100%, 100%, and then you have the relationship.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're bringing together.
That's the 1 plus 1, the complete one, plus the other complete one makes so much more. But for that, we have to be responsible to make sure we can be as complete as possible as individuals. You know, and then we see so many people entering relationships and they're actually broken. And that's not a judgment. And then they hope that a relationship will somehow mend them.
Heal.
And I wouldn't even say heal, I would say unbreak them. And actually, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's about becoming as whole and complete as possible, because only then can you complement each other and can you hope to complement somebody else. Otherwise, you become needy, you become codependent, you become a burden.
And this is not what you want.
And then instead of taking responsibility, and that's where the self-awareness and self-responsibility is so important, you start blaming the other one, who's got nothing to do with it most of the time.
It's pretty remarkable. What are some things that you see, simple steps that couples maybe forget after you get content or after you get into the motions of being in a relationship?
I would say, do not forget that you are not inside your lover. That means that you have to ask him or her regularly every day, because you don't know how that person feels. You can guess, but it's only a guess. You don't know until that person tells you, okay, I feel that way or that way. So when you forget to ask because you so much, I mean, you know him or her by heart, you know everything about him. I mean, everything, it's always, that person feels the other granted. And I can tell you, not so long, and is going to go for a breakup. And you don't want that.
Remember, we all feel we're feeling beings. And we all want to feel like we matter, we're important, and we're valued. When that goes away, well, then the equation 1 plus 1 doesn't exist anymore, because it's 1 plus nothing is there anymore equals something, because you are not making a conscious effort to make the other person feel important, valued, and that they matter. You know, and that doesn't mean out of your way and overspend your money and go in debt and buy something, buy a Rolls Royce that you couldn't afford to make the other person happy. But because that's just trying to fill the void with something that doesn't work. It's really making that conscious effort to see the other person, to hear the other person, to make sure to even ask, do you feel, during the strategic meetings, we always ask, do you feel valued? Do you feel like I value you? Do you feel like you matter in my eyes? Do you feel like you're important to me? And if the answer is no, it's not about having a freak out and a meltdown. It's about asking, why not? Because maybe you want to do the right thing, but what you do is actually the wrong thing, you know? It's like going back to the example of the car that I purposefully use. Maybe you spend your life trying to give Rolls Royces because you think that makes the other person happy, but what they really wanted is a BMW. So it's about and then the other person is never happy and say, you don't get me, you don't understand me, how can you bring me that car ever again, and blah, 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 instead of asking what makes you happy. And sometimes these things change, and that's why we have those meetings so often, you know, they don't last hours, they can last like 5 minutes. If you say, yeah, everything fine, everything's so good, everything's so aligned, we move on. But then otherwise we take the time to discuss, because things change. Maybe you could say, yeah, I really loved Rolls Royce up until now, but really, you know what, sweetheart, this week something changed and I realized I'm really into BMWs, whatever that could symbolize, you know. But it's important to really, and then say, okay, I get it. That's what's important to you, and that's what makes you feel important, that you matter and that you valued. So let me give you that. And it might not be a diamond ring. Maybe it's a flower. Maybe it's making the bed. You know, maybe it's putting the toilet seat down for us, man. Maybe it's something but that means the world for the other person, and that means for the other person that they are seen, they're mattered, they're valued, and they're important to their significant other. And that's why it is so important to remember to never take for granted and make sure we always do what we can to make the other person feel valued, important, and mattering in the eyes of the person, not in what we think is the right thing to do.
Yeah. So much agree.
Yes. And so what I'm hearing you say is communication, authenticity, and vulnerability
Sure.
Yes.
are really keys. And that's something that, I know 5 years ago, I liked different things than what I like now, right? We're constantly changing all throughout life. So if you are avoiding those conversations of having those intimate, vulnerable, authentic conversations, regardless, the way life works and the way we age and the different things that happen to us, we are going to change. And what I'm hearing you say is understanding what those changes look like to each person, because it's just like those photos, right? There's a photo, I'm sure you guys have seen it. You can see an old lady, or you can see a beautiful young lady, right? It's dependent on what people are seeing. And that's just beautiful that you guys have worked that into your relationship and calling those meetings too.
Yeah, it's important because, at times, and as you know, with that picture, we've all seen it, or many of us have seen it, the old lady and the young lady. What is also true is that on some days we see the old ladies, and on some days we see the young lady, and on some days we see both, and on some days we don't see anything at all. And so,
yes.
And that shows we're all evolving. We're not standing still. And so that's what we have to always remember. And that's why healthy relationship is about caring about that evolvement of the other person and making sure that the other person is valued, important, and matters. Because if you never look at a plant in the garden, you plant a beautiful tomato plant, but you never look at it, you never water it, and you just let it, it's going to die.
Same for
If you now look at it, you go over it and say, okay, what do you need? Okay, now it's colder, maybe you need that. And now it's warmer, maybe you need protection. So these things always change for it to be able to thrive and give you abundant produce for lifetimes. And that's the same thing in a relationship. If you don't nurture the other plant, another thing is that it's going to die.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I had to relearn and really learn, I would say, from scratch, because this is not with what I knew before, that I could just implement it. I really had to learn how to live a healthy relationship. And I really had to learn how to see, love, understand, respect, and really be a beneficial presence for the other as a whole, as a complete human being.
Yeah.
Not as a
and that can be
one.
Yeah, and that can totally be from your past relationships that you discussed earlier, and even childhood, right? That's where we bring up a lot of those things. And maybe we didn't see the best relationship with our parents, or even with whoever did raise us, or we didn't have that relationship with a parent, a specific one, and that can really have that void in us. And again, as you guys have mentioned time and time over again, if you are not whole and you're expecting someone else to fill that void, it's not going to work.
No.
So
somebody else can come along and assist you in doing the work, but cannot fill it for you. No. And that's what we try to do to each other, is to assist each other where we can to get the work done that needs to be done.
I have a question that just popped up too in my head. So both of you being transformational life coaches, where do you separate, and do you separate the relationship and the coaching? Are there times where you're like, honey, I love you, I don't need coaching? Or, you know what I mean? Is there a mutual respect? Do you guys, I'm going to let her do her thing, I'm going to let him do his thing and cool off? How do you guys handle that?
Excellent question.
I love your question, actually.
Because it's important. It is very important.
It is. It's true that when we suddenly discover an issue in one or the other, and the other immediately put on the hat of, okay, now it's a coach talking, because we really have to work out this issue. There is something here, and it's a real one. Okay, so very simple. It's either or. Either the person who is suffering, often me, I say,
no, but both.
In
different ways.
I'm thinking about a specific example, actually. Say, no, I don't want to work out that now. I'm so pissed off. Just not now. And say, well, whenever you're ready, my love. Or it's like, okay, breathe through it. We're going to work it out and then it's going to be over. So what do you want? So actually it's a choice. At the moment, there is an issue that is rising up or popping up and you can really see it. There is a choice and there is that moment of choice. Okay, do we work it out now or do we work it out one of these days? And some days when I just said no, a few days later, we came back to it and say, okay, are you still no about that? Because you know that what you do not work out is going to rot and really become very ugly inside.
It's easier for us as we are expert in this field, you know, to detect it in each other. And there can be small issues sometimes, or bigger things, you know, whatever they could be. But so what we always do, as she said, is point it out and then ask, is it now a good time?
Yes.
Because maybe
at
this very moment, one of the other might not be willing to accept that there is an issue, or maybe may accept it but be really upset about it. And so maybe the night right now is not the right time. So it's actually never imposing on the other. You know, it's respecting the other and say, okay, we'll work it out whenever, you know, whenever you feel ready. And not too long because this needs to be worked out, but when you have cooled down or whatever, you know, when it's the right time for you, then yes. It's never like, sit down, we work on this now, whether you want it or not. That's not a relationship.
That would not work.
That's not respect, you know? It's like, okay, I see something there. Do you see it too?
And sometimes I don't see it.
Oh, same, vice versa, you know? And then we go think about, because we always say, okay, I may be not seeing it, but I'm willing to think about it.
Yeah.
And not dismiss it. And then come back after a few days and say, absolutely, I don't see a thing. How do you see what you see? In what instances do you see it? Or start thinking that, yeah, you have a point. Let's talk about it, you know, and let's see what we can do to help each other.
Exactly.
Because it's also building each other up.
Yes, uplifting each other.
I love that. And that can work with so many different relationships, right? One, it shows more love when you are willing to point those things out rather than hold on to them, right?
Yes.
And then also just saying, hey, I'm here for whenever you are ready. That's incredibly powerful. I love it.
And it's also never imposing blame, you know, say, there's a problem and because of that, A, B, C, D, and F, G, and then you have the entire laundry list. No, it's about lovingly and respectfully pointing it out and saying, I think that if we can work on that, your life would be improved. And if you think that too, then let's do something. And if you don't think that's true, then let's just, again, agree to disagree and move on. Because if you're not ready, either one of it, then we're not going to do it. It's pointless. It's like when you work with a client and you know from a coaching business, you can see things, but if they're not ready, well, then you just have to agree to disagree and say, I see something that you don't see. Let's move on. And if we and if we talk about it later down the road, we'll meet again.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it really works that way, actually. By asking the question, are you ready to work it out now? And this comes back to the question when we really ask each other all the time, do we want to do that now or not? And if both say yes, we do it. And if one of both say no, we don't. We respect each other. Always.
Yeah. That's huge. Well, I love this. And you guys have been an amazing couple to interview. I've learned so much from my own relationship, and I know our viewers for sure have as well. Where can everyone find you if they're looking for you, whether it be on social media or online?
So very easy. When you put Gemma.Sascha or Gemma-Sascha or Gemma_Sascha, you're going to find us everywhere. And of course, Gemma-Sascha.com to have the main website and all the other the handles depending where.
Yeah, we took a couple of those to link back to Gemma-Sascha.com.
I also bought Sascha-Gemma for those who are going to put us in the other way around, which works too.
And obviously on our social media, you can find us under our individual names, Gemma Gorokhoff or Sascha Gorokhoff, and I'm sure you will put the right spelling there. And we also have a comment page.
Awesome. And then you do have a free gift for all the viewers and listeners.
Yes, of course.
It's a personal development challenge. Every third week of the month, we do a 6-day personal development challenge. So we're going to give the link, of course, and we're really going to go deep and fast into transforming in 1 week how you feel about yourself and how you, and helping you outgrow yourself in one way or another. It requires you to do the work though.
Yeah, that's the only thing we require from you, is that you're willing to do the work on yourself based on what we're going to tell you. Because unfortunately, filling holes doesn't just fall from the sky. It takes some personal involvement.
It does.
That's twofold with our conversation on relationships, right? It requires you to do the work.
Yes.
It's not just easy. Yes. Well, I love it. And thank you guys so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure. And I'm so excited for our viewers to respond back to this and hear how it supported them. Again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Of course.